You may have heard of a man named Dan Bongino, whose name I can never pronounce, who spent 12 years. Go ahead, look at it. Look at it online, and when you try to read it, you won't be able to pronounce it either. He spent 12 years in the Secret Service protecting the presidents, George W. Bush and President Obama, but he was so disturbed by what he saw in the White House that he defected. He left the Secret Service, and he is now running for Congress in Maryland. The recent hearings on the Benghazi attacks and the media's poor reporting of it have prompted him to speak out, and he joins us today by phone. Dan Bongino, welcome to Smart Life. Good to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, in your book, Life Inside the Bubble, it is almost clairvoyant that it seems like some of these Benghazi hearings and things we've been witnessing as this Benghazi argument has continued. You predicted these. Dan, how did you know?
Well, when you're around this all the time and you see how information flows around, the bubble we call the presidency, because the bubble's not just in the White House, it travels with him everywhere. There was no way when I write in the book, when I first heard this story and I heard that there was some communication mix-up, that they thought they couldn't locate the ambassador and they thought it was a protest, but it wasn't a protest. I thought to myself, this can't be possible. I remember doing overseas trips, and the information exchange is live time. If there was an attack, God forbid, on a hotel the president was in, there are numbers of ways where I can get that information back to Washington, D.C., to decision makers. It's all redundant. And if there was a protest, someone would have said there was a protest. So it just confused me from the start. And I write in the book that this will be exposed. These communication channels will collapse. And unfortunately, I was right.
Why do you think it hasn't happened faster, Dan?
Because the administration is the least transparent administration, I think, in recent American history. Contrary to their assertions that transparency was going to be some key element, in their administration, they've done the exact opposite. They don't share anything, and some of this may be a violation of the law. When you look at the exposure they gave to Judicial Watch pursuant to a legal subpoena, the email information, and then you look at the information they gave to Congress pursuant to congressional inquiries, which hold the same legal weight, they're going to have some explaining to do, because it wasn't the same information, and they were the Judicial Watch one was binding. They didn't have a choice; it was binding. So they have some explaining to do on that front too. I mean, this is not a private company. You don't just get to pick and choose what you put out there. You're subject to the law just like everyone else.
You've been inside the bubble, as your book explains, Life Inside the Bubble. How insulated is the president? Does he understand that the American people know a little bit more is going on here, that we're not as stupid as maybe they'd like to think we are? Or is he just really not privy to the reaction of the American people at all?
I think this is a function of his unfamiliarity with power. I really do. A couple of folks have said to me, I said, listen, it's a grapefruit league White House, a reference to baseball. It really is. They're not the major leagues. The people he brought in were not even B-teamers. They were C-teamers. And they said, well, he brought in Hillary Clinton, and, now he's got John Kerry, and he had, all these other folks with him. He had Larry Summers advising him. These aren't the people he turns to. These aren't the people he trusts. He trusts the Valerie Jarrett types, the David Axelrod types, the Ben Rhodes types, Robert Gibbs. These people were neophytes. I mean, think about it. The man outside. This isn't a personal attack. It's just a fact. The man outside of his short, brief stint in the United States Senate was a community organizer and a state senator. That was it. He had no familiarity. I would have rather had a Secret Service agent. At least they'd been responsible for a leadership role where lives were on the line. I mean, literally, the security, the governing system of the United States will collapse if you screw up your job. I would have rather had a captain in a police precinct rather than the president. And you're seeing this vacuum of leadership right now where he defaults to people who are political animals who have no leadership skills. Listen, politics has always been involved in the presidency. Spinning has always been involved in the presidency. But outright lying and fabrication of complete stories that don't exist is always been looked upon from Nixon on really poorly in the American people. There's no way for him to spin his way out of this.
Dan, you left, and it's been written, so I'm presuming that you said that you left because the Secret Service, because of things that you witnessed in the Obama administration that made it so you could no longer continue to serve in that capacity. I know you can't speak specifically to that. That's obvious. But did it have to do with Benghazi? Can you comment on that or not?
Not specifically, and I don't want it to appear that it was some outright corruption. You know, like I think of that movie, The Last Boy Scout, with Bruce Willis. It was really just a political frustration with what I knew was going on the inside versus what you see on, you know, Fox or CNN or the cable news channels. You never want to see the back of a restaurant sometimes. You know, the guy doesn't wear gloves and he sweats in the soup. And, you know, there's a lot of sweating in the soup in the Obama administration, I think more so than any other, even the Clinton administration. Granted, I wasn't deeply exposed to them, only the last year of their presidency. But it just became one of those things where I knew a sacrifice had to be made. I would rather have not left, but it was hard to watch. I mean, we're watching this slow dismantling of our constitutional republic and a deficit of trust in our government that I don't know if it's going to be able to be paid back anytime soon.
And so you left, and now you're running for Congress. Tell folks how they can help with your campaign, and also where we can find you online.
Oh, thanks. It's Bongino, Bongino.com. I'm running in Maryland's 6th Congressional District, and you can follow me on Twitter at @DBongino. I tweet back. I handle all my own social media, like the Jackie Chan of social media.
You are indeed, and you're a beast on Instagram as well. If folks want to find you.
yeah. I follow you as well. Yeah, I do. I take all my own pics. I'm not a professional photographer. I don't do any kind of photo
But it's
editing.
impressive. It's impressive nonetheless. We're out of time, Dan. Thank you so much. Best of luck to you.